Realised no flaws.
When did I realise there were no flaws in the World Trade Center?
World Trade Center.
Well,
I know you had your suspicions when you went there, and then upon reflection, but when did you actually have that moment of realization, and then maybe that confiding?
It was in, there was the anniversary rolled around in 2015 on September the 11th, and when the anniversary rolled around, they would, put some stories in the media again about 9/11 and not talk about it again. Even though they were talking about it a little bit less at that point. But they were still talking about it quite a lot. And it was just so fucking annoying to see it come round again, like the anniversary, and then trotting out all the bollocks all over again. And then, so I just thought, and the thing is, I was really in this horrible dispute with all the Jews and the fucking Masons just fucking my life up completely, and they were just at the point of like seizing my property in my divorce proceedings. I actually received text messages which were saying things like, if you don't stop being pro-Arab, you're going to get cleaned out in your divorce. So these people were like,
you were the only actual Jews for Justice in Palestine.
I was legit, and this is the problem. They basically, it came to this point where these stupid like rabbis or whoever the fuck, some Gandalf tossers were like sending me these messages, literally admitting by sending these messages that they run all the fucking courts and stuff, and that they can pull any shit. And it's all just a politicised attack, my divorce proceedings. They say, well, if I don't stop being pro-Arab, whatever that, I don't know what I would have to do to demonstrate that I'd stopped over to these people. But they were just like, stop being pro-Arab or you'll get cleaned out in your divorce. So I was getting quite angry, to say the least. There's a lot of backstory to this which I don't want to go into, but basically I was very angry, and then I was presented with, this September the 15 years on, whatever, memorial, was it 14, so it was the 14th anniversary, right, in September 2015. And I was looking at this bollocks and I thought, you know what would really fucking give them a black eye, well, more than a black eye, what would really fuck them up is if I solved 9/11 completely. Because, no one had solved, like, basically I've been following all the stuff about no plane. But it just seemed to me that I had expected that things were going to break through, but I hadn't really, by that point I hadn't really understood just how many shills were in the game and how much deep gatekeeping there was, and how, you could have people even saying that there were no planes, but still somehow kind of gatekeeping you away from the full understanding of what actually happened. Because there was an aspect to this which they thought no one could crack. They thought it was the perfect crime, because they thought that no one could work out that there were no flaws, because they had tried to set a small pile of rubble. Well, yeah, but they tried to set it up so that you can't conceive of the possibility that there were no flaws, because you so deeply believed these were office buildings. So you have to question the fact of them being office, and you wouldn't really have any reason to question that. You know what I mean? The way that they were playing it, it didn't really give any possibility. This is how they stop us getting to the truth. They try and stop us even framing the concept in our minds of what the truth is. So what? Hello viewers, sorry about that. The Sanhedrin gave an order to cut off, intercept our call and fuck it up, because they're not really into no flaws. But anyway, so I was just answering the question about when I figured out no flaws, which was basically, well, I had my suspicions. I had certain suspicions when I looked in the building in 2000, but then on the anniversary when they were talking all bollocks about 9/11 again, and I was really angry. I was like, right, I'm going to solve it. And I was just starting to look at all the material on YouTube and just checking out what was going on. And I came upon this Judy Wood, in quotes, Dr. Judy Wood character. And I saw her first video, which was basically, so they had this footage, in the video, they had this footage of these people coming into a lecture theatre to hear a talk. And then they cut to her going up on a stage, but they weren't the same building. So, you know, she wasn't talking to an audience. She was just in some soundstage. She's not a real person. There was no real conference. I looked up the conference that she was supposedly talking at. It's just amazing. It was just like some free energy conference. It didn't really occur. It's not. The whole thing is just you know, she's just a CIA play, basically. So they had to bring her in because basically the problem was that people were starting to ask about, you know, the freefall collapse of the buildings and why there was so little debris and this kind of thing. And so she was trying to, they fielded her specifically to stop anyone thinking that maybe there were no flaws, because they fielded her to go with this whole shtick of like, where did the floors go? What happened to the floors? Did the floors get vaporized? How did they get vaporized? So her whole starting point was, how did the floors get vaporized? So by starting at that point in the in quotes analysis, she goes straight past the possibility that there weren't any floors. So this is how they play their games, right? They take you off down this track where she starts talking about, you know, some secret energy weapons or whatever. And it's all just, you know, it's all to prevent you thinking, conceiving of the possibility there weren't any flaws, and also, you know, to go down that old tried and tested line of pretending that the American government has secret weapons programs and amazing technologies, and you know, it's all part of this, them presenting themselves as godlike beings, you know, that they might have these devices that can vaporize things. Is that, what have you seen with your eyes, these powers that they ascribe to themselves? You never see any of these powers, like that they can destroy entire cities with one weapon, you know. Well, they could, you know, poison a whole continent with their bioterror, you know, biological weapons, genetic specific. Yeah, all this shit, or the conspiracy stuff that they put out, you know, where it's like they can control the weather with the HARP arrays and stuff. It's all, if you all of it. All of that stuff. If you think about it, it's all kind of the same thing. It's all about there are these godlike beings who walk the earth, and you just kind of believe that they're very powerful, and it's just part of their whole power psyop. They're just magical surgeons. Yeah, they're just magical. It's all just this magic of the spectacle and the big thing, you know, whether it's a volcanic explosion or it's a thing in space, or, you know, it's a lot of people. Yeah, man. They can't vaporize any floors with, you know. So she comes along to say, how did the floors get vaporized? And as I was watching her video, as soon as she said, the reason that she's starting to look into this is because there's so little evidence of floor debris. And I hadn't really, before that, I hadn't examined all of the floor debris and stuff. I hadn't really examined stuff in that stuff in enormous detail myself, because I kind of assumed at that time, I like many people, was under the impression that there were lots of 9/11 truthers working very hard to get to the truth. Yeah. In fact, there were not. There were zero. Yeah. There were zero real truthers trying to get to the truth and sharing it. Right? There were plenty of people looking for it who were ready to hear it, but there was none of the, you know, when I did No Flaws and I published it, I started posting links to my first No Flaws video. When I went into 9/11 groups on Facebook, and they just literally all, as I was posting these links, they just deleted my post and banned me from everyone. There were like dozens of 9/11 truth groups called, the uncensored truth, the actual truth, really the truth, not the bullshit truth. 9/11, hey, we're really not Jews running this group. Truth. You know what I mean? This kind of shit. And all of them kicked me out and blocked me. All of them, immediately. Nobody knew me in these groups to, have any beef with me or other reason. It was the first I just joined the group, posted a link, kicked out and banned from everywhere. They were really just, there were no real truthers. There were some people, the closest thing was, people who were saying that there were no planes and stuff. Of course there were no planes, and they were right. But they weren't still all these people seem to be taking it seriously, like this architects and engineers group or whatever. They weren't seeing this, they weren't seeing that all these, in quotes, groups that the media talked about were all just CIA fronts for their bollocks, right? Just different, it's just how they operate. And so I came to realise that that the CIA were basically successfully controlling the whole truth of the game at that point, because it's not just 9/11 but everything, because I've been fighting them for years, on Israel-Palestine stuff. I came to realise that the truthers were controlling all of the kind of YouTube material, because not just that all the channels were run by shills, which pretty much they were, but they don't. They had succeeded in putting other people off from publishing videos who might otherwise have done so, because the way they work is they want to make you think all the gaps are filled. Like,
yes.
If it occurred to you to wonder, are people putting videos out digging at the truth of 9/11? Then yes, they're there. You know what I mean? They make sure that's covered. They got people doing that, so that in 2002
they came out with Dylan Avery and all that bullshit.
I don't know what that is. What's that?
That was an initial 9/11 documentary, the Hunter Rubble or something. The initial one. Dylan Avery's film.
What? Okay, I don't know about that.
The point is that had planes in it, that had they already had CGI images of floors in the buildings, they had lots of that crap already.
Oh, I see.
As early as 2002, they already publicly put out these. Loose Change, sorry, the documentary is called Loose Change. Okay.
Well, there were the fake CIA conspiracy things. So, for example, Michael Moore. So he was the poster boy for the fake 9/11 truth stuff, right? That was a perfect example when he made that movie of where so he just, that whole movie, he pretends the Bin Laden family don't even exist. They're not even real. In fact, they recently killed them all off in a plane crash story, so that all of them, they said that basically all the remaining members of the Bin Laden family crashed in a one plane crash and died, and that's it. So just to get rid of the whole, they just had to shut it down completely, right? Because these people never existed, and that was coming out. So they've just been trying to do stuff to shut down, tie up loose end storylines that could go wrong for them. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got to kill off all these people before anyone says, hey, can I interview someone from the Bin Laden family? Or can I talk to one of the families of the victims? Or, they've been trying to sort of clean it up. But I've totally lost my train of thought now.
That's okay.
No flaws. It's all about no flaws.
I can interject an interesting bit. I saw the film recently, Robert Zemeckis, the Jew, who made the film about the wire walker between the World Trade Center. They go to erroneous lengths to make extended, long scenes that no filmmaker would ever put in this film, making sure that you have to sit there and wait and watch as these desperate people trying to get up the tower have to wait for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trucks full of office furniture to deliver it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
This is the film that they did not show the mast.
this is the one called The Walk. So
That's correct, yes.
the CGI models of the buildings. First of all, they took off the mast, but they also took off the other. On my channel, there's a video that shows a guy with a camcorder filming on the roof of the World Trade Center, and not while it was collapsing. This is before it collapsed, and he was filming all the masts and stuff. So there's the big mast in one building, but the other building also had transmission or other antennae stuff going on it, right? So they actually both had, it wasn't like a big tall mast, but it had stuff on the roof. And it also had stuff like, I noticed watching it again recently, it had razor wire. So they had razor wire all around the edge of the roof. You know where, so this is the roof the tourists could go up to, right? And they had put hardcore coils of razor wire all the way around it. So, because if you think about it, they must have been really quite scared that somebody could pull some stunt where they decide to kind of lower themselves over the edge or do some, I don't know, some prank where they might actually get a view of the no floors. So
yes.
You couldn't, if you leaned out enough from the top, you might be able to actually see quite clearly through the top, because you're looking then down, from the top where they, if you look in the photos and stuff, there are sight lines where you might be able to see into the structure of the building and notice that it was all fucked up and hollow. So they put razor wire all around it, and the whole look of in that film, The Wire, they changed the whole look of the roofs. They put different things there, and some of there's some little jokey. They actually put a little joke in the CGI of the roof, because there's one shot which shows, I think, there's a piece of steel beam which has been cut diagonally, which I noticed on the roof. Like it was almost like a little in-joke tribute to the diagonal cut steel in the 9/11 wreckage. Do you remember that? Because there was thermite cut steel, right? And they literally put a little thing like that on the roof in that film, in the background. You have to look, you know what I mean? You have to look closely in the background of those shots. So they were like joking around about the whole 9/11 thing, and then they made the fascia of the building different, so that it didn't look like the windows were concealed as much as they actually were. And obviously it had, flaws in the CGI version. But also then, like you said, this idea of a loading bay. So in order to make you think that it's a real building, it helps them to introduce the idea that there was a bomb in the underground car park in 1993. So that whole story of the first attempted bombing established the idea that there was an underground car park that the bomb went into, and that then there were people who had to be shepherded out from some. If you watch the footage of that incident, they just take them out of an adjacent building. They don't come out of the Twin Towers. They come from somewhere else. But they said that the bomb had gone off under the Twin Towers in the underground car park. But there was no underground car park. Underneath the Twin Towers, they put the path station. And they'd done that, so they had all these people coming and going to help confuse the issue that there were no people going in and out of the buildings. So by having the station underneath it, they could pretend that the elevator took people straight down to and from the station platforms. And so that would be another reason why nobody's walking around on the plaza, right? So it's like, and then they introduced this idea in the film, like you said, of all this furniture having to go in and out via like a loading bay, which would also be down, as part of the car park area underneath the buildings. So you then think, there's psychologically, they just go very deep with this programming, because by watching this, you think, if you let it seep in or affect you in any way, they've implanted this idea that there was an underground car park that got bombed, there was a loading bay that existed. There was no loading bay, there was no car park, right, in reality. And also that they needed to move loads of furniture through it because there really were offices, there really were floors. It's all this programming, and they go so deep on it, and you can see how desperate they are by that movie. That the movies that they produce and these kind of artifacts and these stories they run show exactly how fucked they know that they are, because they're having to run these. Like, it makes no sense.
There's a film from 2008 where Robert Pattinson, the vampire boy, who is the new teenage heartthrob, is standing on a floor for a job interview in the middle of the World Trade Center as the shadow of the plane approaches.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they've got to get it into the young. It's just like when I was at school, they traumatize the shit out of you with this Hollowhooks programming.
This film, The Walk, doesn't culturally make sense why anyone would greenlight that film at the time that it came out. Like, no one's interested in 9/11. There have already been too many 9/11 movies. People have, even the media's been saying there have been too many 9/11 movies. There's no appetite for a 9/11 movie. There's no appetite for a wire walking 9/11, World Trade. There's just, you can't, you couldn't explain in commercial terms why, or artistic terms, why they decided to make that film. And in fact, I think it was actually the second film about the wire walking. Well, they'd actually done others. They'd done a lot of stuff about the wire walking.
It was a BBC documentary. I actually met the producer of that at the Adelaide Film Festival. There's a BBC documentary.
On the wire.
Even that initial event, is that just another hoax? I would say probably so.
Yeah. The photos are not. I mean, the photos that I've looked at are not real. I mean, they're all just doctored bollocks. I don't think anyone did walk a wire between those buildings. And then the story of the person who did walk it, they just kind of reimagined it in quotes. But they just reimagine it. It's like they could even change it. It could be a man. They change it to a woman. It could be this. It doesn't matter. They just reboot it. All they want to do, right, with a film like The Walk, they want to make sure you see the trailer where they put CGI crap in, because the trailer's got that programming, because they know nobody wants to see that film. I know you watched it, you told me you watched it, but I can't imagine there are very many people who did, because why would you? It looks shit, it's on a boring subject, it's like a subject which should be interesting, the World Trade Center, and they've managed to make it into boring shit, and the trailer looks awful, and I just don't see why anyone would watch it. They only made it so that you see the trailer and it helps to just psyops you about the structure of the buildings, that helps you forget about the antenna on top. Because if you think about it, they're hoping in the future there'll come a point where people don't look at the photos, and maybe they'll just memory hold the fact that there was a massive mast on top. Because if they start making all their material CGI stuff where there isn't a mast, then they just hope it'll be forgotten, and that no one will examine photos of the building and talk about that mast. It's just, they just don't want it talked about, and they just want it to sort of fade out.
Well, this is a good point to move on to the mast. What is the purpose of these hollow structures then?
Well, the reason they thought it was a perfect crime, 9/11, because they thought that even though it was obviously, so it was quite obviously bollocks, and they obviously expected people to be scratching their heads a bit at aspects of the official story because it was so stupid, right? But they were so confident that nobody could actually do anything about it, even if you thought that's a load of bollocks. They didn't think that people would be able to bust it entirely. Even when people had figured out there were no planes and stuff, it still didn't quite get right down to the heart of how deep the conspiracy goes, right? Because people who are debating or saying it was an inside job. I mean, that's a gatekeeping kind of concept of an inside job, because inside job is when they say it in the media, they're trying to give the impression that yes, it really happened as presented, but the people behind it were different to those presented, right?
Yes.
They're just trying to gatekeep you away from the idea that it wasn't the event as presented at all. Like, there was no terror attack, there were no dead people. They just don't want you going down that way of thinking. And you couldn't really come up with the idea that there were no flaws unless you thought there might be another reason for the building. Because why the hell would you build? Some people have even said, like, commenting stuff, they said, well, maybe they just built building only to be demolished, and that was its only purpose. But that doesn't, actually just doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Anyway, and it doesn't, because there are plenty of other no flaws buildings. So as we know now,
well, we have the KLCC Twin Towers here in Malaysia.
Yeah, and they don't have. It's silly. These are probably just more discrediting shills who are trying to make things look stupid and silly, saying that maybe they were hollow for no reason and they just built them only to do this demolition stunt. Now, they're big hollow structures because they were electrical masts. So they were collecting electrical charge from the air and using it to provide a power supply to downtown Manhattan. And it seems, it seems to me that there is a huge battery also part of the system of downtown Manhattan, which is it's an area of Manhattan known as the Battery. That's the name. So if you look about the Battery in New York City, it's an area of the tip of Manhattan of reclaimed land. Right now, they say it's called the Battery because there used to be an artillery battery during some war or whatever.
Oh, a hoax war, great.
Yeah, but these hoax wars, there was no artillery, and there's no such thing as artillery battery. It's all just fake history. My educated guess would be that the Battery is the Battery for downtown Manhattan. So you have the power systems all around the world. Basically, you need these components. You need the masts to collect the electricity from the air, and the masts are generally tall masts, or they could be like power lines across the countryside, like long power lines. That's another way. So, but you've got the collectors, which are masts or power line structures, and then you've got the battery system. So you've got to have batteries because the amount of you're collecting electricity at a variable rate. It's being used at a variable rate as well. So demand's changing, supply's changing, so you need a battery system to make it reliable, and to make it very reliable you need a very large amount of battery capacity.
That's right.
So if you're powering a whole city, or a whole part of a city like downtown Manhattan, then you need very tall masts like the World Trade Center, and you need a massive battery, perhaps stored in an area underneath the surface of some reclaimed land. So you have a battery facility that's covert that you don't draw attention to. Because other cities have massive batteries, like warehouses full of batteries, but they just don't like to talk about it very much. I put a video up on my channel of someone taking someone on a tour of one of them. It's just a massive warehouse full of batteries that just it doesn't really make sense why you would add that to a city if the power is coming from power stations where you could control the output. Because you would control the output of the power stations, it would be wasteful to store it in a battery and then tap it out of a battery. Why would you need batteries in this, or significant batteries in a power station system? They don't tell us. When they tell us about when they tell us about power stations, there seems to be a technical hitch. So, hello. Sorry, we had a technical problem again. Nightmare. But okay, I was talking about batteries. I can't remember what I was saying.
We're talking about, so they have these large masts which collect the electrical charge from the static in the air, and then obviously in order to regulate the supply they need to have large batteries and capacitors to store the charge, distribute it.
Yeah, so in the story that we're told in our education system about all the power stations and all the modern world
turbines,
all that crap.
Okay,
so alright, there's so many problems with that. So you're meant to think that there's power stations, so they don't tell in the official story there isn't a call for any big batteries, right? They don't talk about city-sized batteries, right? Because they don't really fit into their picture that they paint of how it all works. But there are these batteries, so, and you can, so immediately there's a question there about why are there these big batteries? Their whole story is thrown into question by that. But also, if you just think back to just think about what they tell you about how power's generated. They tell you they're pumping molten dinosaur. So they've got this. There's a molten dinosaur is under the surface of the Earth. So you need expensive drilling equipment. So you need to drill down, pump out the molten dinosaur. Then you need to put that through various processes like fractional distillation and that kind of stuff in some plant to do that, right? And then you get the stuff that's good to burn in power stations, that fraction of it, and then you ship that to the power station, I guess in trucks or down a pipe or something. It's not clear really. Anyway, that rocks, because these power stations would either have trucks constantly coming and going with loads of oil or other, they've got to have somewhat, the whole logistics is like they just gloss over that.
Wouldn't they have to refine the oil? But then sometimes they show the oil being on fire and exploding out of the earth, the oil well fires.
Well,
and it's stuff
the oil, once they've taken the stuff that's meant to go to power stations, then that's apparently burned to boil water. So you burn it to boil water, to produce steam, to turn a turbine, which turns a dynamo, which creates some power, right?
It's highly inefficient.
It's beyond, it's just stupid. It's absurd. It's just completely stupid. Like, when the first time I heard this, I was like, fuck off, that's just, it just sounded like bollocks, right?
Yes, yeah.
Because why would you and also, quite apart from the fact that it sounds like bollocks and you'll never find a turbine, it just simply, they don't exist. Like, where are they? Where's the evidence to back this up? They don't exist. So, but anyway, you don't need to even check whether they exist to know their story's bullshit, because if you just go back to the beginning of electricity,
yes, this is a great one.
the first thing electricity was going to be used for was to power lights.
Yes, yeah.
So there are two inventions. There's a light bulb and there's the power supply for the light bulb, right? And here if you just think about it, there's a real chicken and egg problem here.
That's right.
Because in their story, how would you get a steady power supply to power a light bulb in their story? You've already set up a drilling operation to drill oil and fractionally distill it and put it in a turbine burning thing and a dynamo. So you've already got a dynamo in there. So how did you get the dynamo before a light bulb? So how would you invent? How would it be possible to come up with to invent or create the technology for drilling oil and then having a power station? Like, what? You just can't. First of all, you need that, right, before you can power lights, because where are they going to get the power to develop the light technology? Where's it? It's got to come from a power station, or...
That's right.
Because if you go right back to the beginning, at the beginning of their story, right, all you've got is a world with no electricity usage, right, and just some lightning storms. So it's just, you see lightning, you don't know, you can't use that. You can't use lightning, can you, to develop bulb technology, right? To invent a light bulb. You have no way of using that lightning in their story, right? So in their story, you have to have already built a power station before you can, also a power supply system, before you can design and come up with a light bulb. But why would you create, first of all, how could you create a power supply before, right? And also, why would you? You wouldn't, because you haven't got any use yet. You haven't invented the light bulb. So this is a time when the light bulb has not been even invented or conceived of. People see lightning in the sky. Someone's gone, and then you're supposed to believe someone's gone, I know, why don't we drill up the molten dinosaur and simply burn it, boil some water, use the steam from the water to drive a turbine, use the turbine to drive this carefully complex metal coil device, just in case that generates some electricity, and then we'll use it, and they wouldn't we'll just try and make sparks or something. That's what you're meant to believe, that they, it's just an impossible. They try not to talk about it, or they just draw attention away from the origin story of electricity, because you cannot actually create any history of inventions, any sequence of steps of discoveries and inventions that could possibly make any sense, because they're trying to cover the fact that they did have a steady supply of electricity, and all you need for a steady supply is a tall mast. So it's pretty obvious in the reality, someone would have discovered that these tall masts have current flowing down them, because you could maybe see sparks, or they'd warm up, or all sorts of things, right?
That's right.
You can imagine how they'd develop a mast technology, or they would, examining trees and figuring stuff out, like, because I've looked at trees and figured out that they're electric and what's going on, and do you know what I mean? So,
absolutely.
So you could imagine easily how people could figure out the
from
idea.
The mast itself, you could then imagine how you could envision a filament for a globe.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that it's easy to imagine how they would have come upon mast technology before then inventing a light bulb to make use of it, right?
That's right.
Because the mast could be, just through accidents of stuff they did with metal. If they just built a very tall metal thing and then found that people were getting electric shocks from it when they touched it, or this kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? You can imagine how they came upon this possibility of the masts in the first place.
Yeah.
But you couldn't invent you can't really imagine how they could have ever come up with a power station powered by fuel, by these various kinds of fuels that they claim exist. It's like, why were you? What was the motivation for drilling the hole to find the oil, and how did you know that you'd get something flammable, some flammable molten dinosaurs that you could use to generate electricity? And if you didn't know that, why did you put the money into drilling, all this, developing drilling equipment? And also, that drilling equipment was all developed supposedly before electricity, was it? I mean, there's just so many problems. Like, if you just look at all the kit that's required for generating power in their model, and even in the simplest ways of doing it, and you just think, well, how did those things get invented? They couldn't have been. You can't make a backstory for this, and that's why they haven't. If you
just gloss over it.
Well, if you could make a backstory for it that made sense, then they would have done. I mean, because it would be in their interest, obviously, to cover that serious hole in the plot of their their matrix, right? But when you try and look into it, so if you research it, you just you can't find it's all very vague and conflicting information. Just like if you try and look into lightning and try and find out anything about lightning, like what causes it really in any detail, and anything beyond kind of the vaguest childish explanations, you can't find anything about any of it. They don't have a story. And so they must have. This is why they made the first installation in 1879 was in Blackpool, where they put street lighting in, and so they put these lamps on the streets for the first time, and but they gave out pamphlets talking bullshit about how the electricity was being produced to power them. Because in the middle of this row of lights was the Blackpool Tower, which they just built, which was a massive metal mast. So that was providing the power supply for the street lighting for the first time in the world, apparently. This is hearsay history information, but I understand the first street lighting was the Blackpool illuminations powered by the Blackpool Tower in the middle of it. And this was then, so this is template for everything they did later, because there they are giving out pamphlets saying, someone's come up with some snazzy, whizzy machine that generates power from some fuel or something. Just whatever. They can tell people anything because they're blinded by the lights. They're dazzled. They are,
We have an expression in Australia, it's called blinded by science, and it means when an individual uses fancy explanation, complex terminology in order to mask what they're actually doing, which is just a simple con.
Yeah. So it's very deep. Once you realise this truth about their electricity, it runs through all the language and stuff. It runs through everything.
That's right. The elite, the Illuminati,
the Illuminati being from illumination, and they always talk about bringing the light and sharing the light and light and.
And they have their words for static light and light and motion with the Greek terms lux and lumen, luxury, luminosity.
And we're meant to be spreading us Jews meant to be spreading light unto nations, right? And this is what it's all. No, but this is what it's all about. This is what the Jews are. This is what the Masons are. There's one secret society, and it's based around this secret of the real source of all our electricity, and that's why they built all the fake science to hide it.
Yeah.
All of people, even like. People bang on about all sorts of reasons. Why did they do flat Earth? Flat Earth is part of a whole fake science. The whole of which is basically the whole of the fake kind of physics and stuff is all about hiding this free energy. That's really at the heart of it. So that like layer upon layer of obfuscation, so that you can't ever conceive of the possibility of this, because you've got so many stories to get. You've got so many stories you would have to kind of get past and discredit and debunk, in order to be able to even think about the possibility that there's a huge free energy conspiracy. Because with free energy, they also they have plenty of conspiracies that they run. CIA fake conspiracies where they. The usual story is like that Rockefeller and all that lot buy up all the free anything promising in the area of free energy gets bought up and then shut down or made rubbish or whatever by the fossil fuel guys, right? So that's the kind of conspiracy that they try and push. They didn't want anyone to think that free energy is not only solved but is in use and has always been in use. That they never wanted anyone to. They just didn't think anyone could bust it. Same with 9/11, and the two are obviously linked because it was the free energy mast. They